From the European Parliament in Brussels, this is Raw Politics. Thank you for joining us tonight, and this is what we have on the programme: Call for Compromise. A day before Theresa May comes to Brussels, from former Commission President José Manuel Barroso. Over and out, Euronews brings together heavy hitters to talk about Brexit from a European perspective. Orban offensive. Hungary's president ratchets up the rhetoric over migration ahead of European elections. Jihadist homecoming. Europe responds to an American ultimatum about the fate of ISIS fighters in Syria. And Islamic socialism. Donald Trump rips into the far left in tonight's Raw Moment. Well, it is time to meet our panelists this evening. Joining us is Andrew Byrne. He is the EU correspondent with the Sunday Times. Andrew, which of these stories are you watching closely?
Well, in particular, I'm watching Hungary because I think it's a fascinating problem with a country that has not an immigration problem, but an emigration problem, and is still spending tens of millions of taxpayers' money, tens of millions of euros of taxpayers' money on this anti-migration ad campaign.
Yeah, the rhetoric is really interesting coming from Hungary. All right, also joining us tonight, Nina Gill. She is a British MEP sitting with the Socialists and Democrats group. What about you, Nina? Which of the stories are you watching?
I'm afraid in my life it's Brexit, Brexit
Yes.
and Brexit. I'm watching it very closely because most people I meet in the Parliament and elsewhere all want to know what is going on and what will happen in 39 days. And I wish I knew, but that's the issue that I'm watching very closely.
All right. I wish someone had an answer for us. Also tonight joining us, Jacqueline Foster. She's a British MEP sitting with the European Conservatives and Reformists group. What about you, Jacqueline?
Well, of course, Euronews held a very interesting panel debate in London today with the former Commissioner, Mr. Barroso. So, of course, I found that very interesting today. And you also mentioned the issue of the British young woman, the Jihadi, who is obviously in a refugee camp at the moment.
All right, and also another interesting topic. But tonight we will start with that conference that Jackie was mentioning earlier. One day before British Prime Minister Theresa May heads to Brussels to talk Brexit, a former EU Commission president is calling on Europe to be more flexible. José Manuel Barroso made the comments in London at a conference hosted by Euronews, which brought some heavy hitters to talk about Brexit from a European perspective. Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, was there this morning, and he is joining us now from London. Good to see you there, Darren. Can you tell us more about this comment from Mr. Barroso?
Yeah, indeed. As you say, it was a conference held by Euronews here in London at the Saatchi Galleries. Over and out, we called it, looking ahead to Britain leaving the European Union, we suspect at the end of March, and a discussion about Brexit and its ramifications from, as you say, a European perspective. And given the fact that we saw a populist poll commissioned by Euronews today suggesting that a third of French people and Italians thought that Britain had already left the European Union, clearly, Tessa, you and I have got a bit more work to do in trying to inform European audiences that that is not yet the case. One of those people that we did hear from today, as part of trying to inform people across the continent of this Brexit process, as you say, was José Manuel Barroso, the former Commission President who served from 2004 to 2014. He continually emphasised that the UK would continue to be a very important partner to the European Union, whatever happens at the end of March. But when I pushed him on this point about whether Europe needed to compromise a little bit more to try and get Theresa May's deal, the deal that obviously has been agreed to by the 27 other EU nations, to get that over the line past this UK Parliament, he seemed to concede that, yes, Brussels needed to listen and potentially needed to move a little bit more.
I hope, and from what I know from the European Union, the Europeans will make some accommodation. There will be still some room, probably not reopening the withdrawal agreement. One thing I've learned in Brussels is even if it is very difficult for the Europeans to agree on something, it's even more difficult to change it once it is agreed. So it's difficult to reopen the withdrawal agreement, but it should be possible with some legal creativity and imagination to find some kind of compromise.
Mr. Barroso also talked about the influence that the UK has had in the European Union, how sad he was to see it go, but how a no-deal Brexit would be a lose-lose situation for both sides. Though he did suggest that given the timescale, given the fact that we are only 38 days away from that Brexit deadline and no agreement is still in place on this Irish backstop, that Article 50 is likely to be extended. Now, we also heard, it must be said, from the Brexit minister, Kwasi Kwarteng, who was also at the conference speaking to the audience assembled by Euronews. He made the point that May's deal, he thinks, has been badly distorted by politicians and indeed by the media, that it is a good deal that fulfills the UK's red lines, but ultimately also has the EU on side in regards to a future trading relationship that could work for both sides. So an interesting debate, lots of conversation, Tessa, but again, a reminder, I think, that poll, that lots of people are still not necessarily terribly clear about where we are in this stage of the Brexit process.
All right, thanks for that, Darren. We'll be back with Darren in just a minute with more from the conference. But first, I'd like to get your reaction on what Mr. Barroso had said. And this idea of a delay or an extension, if more people talk about it, doesn't seem so alien anymore. Jacqueline, what do you think about that idea?
I wouldn't particularly welcome an extension or a delay. I've always supported the withdrawal agreement since it was finalised, whilst appreciating there were certainly some sensitivities, but we focused them down to, obviously, the Northern Ireland issue, along with the Republic of Ireland border. And I do believe that the House of Commons then came up with a solution. I've always believed, I'm an optimist, I've always believed that there is a way through this. And so I very much welcome Mr. Barroso's comments today. He was an extremely effective head of commission for 10 years. And I remember him very well when he was here. So I think it's when you listen to someone like him, he carries a great deal of weight. And I do believe there is now more political will from both sides now to try and achieve a resolution.
Because the message he had was compromise. He was telling, to Juncker, basically, is compromise. Otherwise, Brussels could be blamed for a no-deal Brexit. But if Brussels does compromise, I'd ask you this, Nina, will it open the doors for Brussels just having to give in so it doesn't get blamed?
Well, I think the thing is that, the backstop is one of the issues that is causing the problems. But this is not the only issue, because one of the issues that the EU is well aware of and why they don't want to open up. And I have no problem, with Brussels finding a way through and being creative. Although I do wonder as to exactly who Barroso is speaking for, whether it's Goldman Sachs or whether he's really talking about the EU interests. But the point is that, the hardliner within Theresa May's government or in her party will not be satisfied because they want the most extreme of Brexits. They do not want a deal. And Brussels knows this, that they don't want a deal. And this is the place we're in.
So what is she going to be bringing here tomorrow, Andrew?
Well, I think, first of all, I think there's a tendency at this point in the Brexit debate to focus on any small signal or hint by any official, current or former, as a signal of a new change, because, frankly, we all want to see this process move forward somehow. But I think we should be precise about what exactly it was Mr. Barroso was suggesting there. He said himself he didn't think that any compromise would involve reopening the withdrawal agreement. Sure. So that's the consistent line from the EU on that. That's not going to change, it seems. They're not willing to do so. About a compromise on the extension of Article 50, I mean, the EU has always been clear that if the UK requests it, they won't object to it. So I think what he's talking specifically about, to be precise, is about a compromise or a legal assurance, which doesn't really change things in substance. But this goes to the question of what comes up tomorrow when British officials come to visit. Sure. And we're expecting to see a more precise proposal delivered in oral form or later in
I'll go to you, Jacqueline, in a bit.
I
just wanted to bring another comment, because Mr. Barroso's comments were echoed by Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker earlier this week. He said that while delaying Brexit talks would be possible, any extension beyond May elections would be problematic. And he said, quote, any decision to ask for more time lies with the UK. If such a request were to be made, no one in Europe would oppose it. But if you were asking for how long the withdrawal can be postponed, I have no time frame in mind. But I find it hard to imagine that British voters would again vote in the European elections. So that was Jean-Claude Juncker weighing in on that. Jacqueline, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just 2 points. First of all, our Attorney General, Geoffrey Cox, I believe is over. And so you're talking about, obviously, an Attorney General, the whole legal force, really, speaking for the government of the UK, working closely, clearly with the players over here. So I think that's very important that he's been over, and he may be here tomorrow as well. Because I think there is now a will to try and find a way without, as you quite rightly say, opening the entire withdrawal agreement. We know that can't happen. But with regards to what you've just mentioned on the way forward, I do believe that there is a way forward on this now. And when the Prime Minister, I think, comes over tomorrow, I think that hopefully should take it forward even further. But my final point is on the extension. There are 73 seats that the British parliamentarians hold at present.
Sure.
They have already been divvied out. OK, they can be divvied back in to the other 27. And therefore, I fully understand my colleagues in different political parties when they're preparing for the European election with their lists and everything else, they're not wanting for the sort of further procrastination.
They have no appetite
and not wanting to know themselves what they're doing with Britain over here. So I think it's in everybody's interest to really try and get this sort of settled without extending anything.
Yeah, I think what I wanted to say was that it is important that we look at what is required for UK to now conclude. I mean, we are so late in the day in even trying to find an agreement. Even if we have an agreement, we are likely to need some kind of an extension. So this idea that we can leave on the 29th of March with concluding the 50 pieces of legislation that need to be in place in order for us to leave is really now starting to become like an impossible hurdle. But, you know, I think most people now expect that there's going to be some kind of an extension, but to 2nd of July, which does not require the UK MEPs to take part in the European elections. I do think that will be problematic if the UK, you know, has European elections, because it's likely to lead to some kind of backlash. But my concern is that even with some sort of compromise, I am not sure that Mrs May has the majority to be able to, you know, because she's so far from the opposition. So, you know, this is the problem.
Let's head back to London for a minute now, because our political editor, Darren, he has a lot more from that conference. A lot of ideas, actually, are being thrown around, especially where Brexit is concerned. Darren, what else came out of that discussion today? A very lively one, I heard.
Yeah, indeed it was. And just picking up there on what essentially the former Commission President Barroso was talking about was this type of legal creativity. He argued time and time again that in his time as Commission President, they had done quite well in trying to get around big major obstacles. And that ultimately they could do if the will was there. But of course, the big question, Tessa, is even with that legal creativity, could they get it through that place? Could they get it through Parliament? But everyone respectively listened to Mr Barroso. That was then followed by a panel I chaired with leading Brexiteers and Remainers. And as you say, it got pretty feisty. Very robust discussions between all involved. Let's have a watch.
Richard, let's start with this. You're a businessman. I take it you think that Brexit is a global opportunity and not what Her Majesty's Treasury say, every bank, every economist who suggests it is an act of national self-harm.
What we're talking about is the opportunity to be free again, free to be a self-determining nation. And none of that is coming through the debate. And that's what the people want. They're bored of the subject. They desperately just want to get on with it, leave, get the job done. And that's the shame at the moment, is that optimism is not coming through the leadership from the government, and that's what we need. And look forward to hearing what Kaza has to say later.
I really need to ask what you mean by free, because freedom in Europe has a meaning. Free from what?
It means nothing.
What freedom?
What freedom? Free to be a self-determining nation.
Christopherson told us freedom means you've got nothing left to lose, and that's where we're going. Leave means leave for Nissan, Airbus, Panasonic, Sony, now Honda. Not... And for all the EU citizens who don't know what their status is, you know what.
I know exactly what it is. Listen, let's be very clear. Why are Nissan doing what they're doing? Because they've just signed a free trade deal with the European Union, which means that now there are no tariffs between Japan and the EU, therefore they can produce the manufacturing in Japan. So that's why they're leaving. It's got nothing to do with Brexit.
What would you say to the people that don't know if the job is going to be online or not? What do you say to the workers of BMI Airlines, who just announced that they would actually go in liquidation.
A badly run business.
I'm speaking now.
You interrupted us with glee, didn't you? So we can have our own back. You've got badly run businesses.
I have not finished the sentence.
You've got badly run businesses going bust. It happens. It's called capitalism.
No, they clearly said that it was because of Brexit. The City of London said that 800... I usually don't like to put figures, but in front of people who still, 40 days before Brexit, are giving these bullying slogans, you know, wishful thinking. It is so irresponsible of you. It is so irresponsible.
So there is a truth to be told that actually people have voted. Your side essentially lost the referendum. Shouldn't people coerce behind the result and actually see and be optimistic about this rather than seeing it as the kind of worst decision ever? Isn't optimism missing from this, from the Remain side?
I think optimism is missing because what is there to be optimistic about, frankly, about the path that the government's following? Richard talks about economists and what they say about the future. The government produced a report with about 20, 30 economic forecasts. One said, in any scenario whatsoever, we might be a bit better off. All the others said we were worse off. Can anybody name a democracy which has knowingly voted to make itself poorer?
But when you look at the companies that are leaving or those that are in trouble, Brexit may well be a factor, and they may well be citing Brexit as a factor, but there are a whole load of other reasons. Sure. These companies may well be leaving or going bust irrespective.
It does seem to me an odd coincidence that so many companies seem to be leaving the UK at a time when we are leaving the EU. And it doesn't seem to me any coincidence.
Richard, you're a business.
Well, coming in.
I mean, there are 10... Actually, it's not hundreds of jobs.
Can we just put this in perspective, right? The bedrock of the UK economy is the SME.
We have got 10,000 so far jobs have been lost as a result of including Brexit.
We're employing more people in this country than we've ever employed before. Contrary to what Anna has just said, the UK last year grew faster than Germany, France and Italy. And our unemployment levels are about half of the Eurozone unemployment levels. And we've got wages growing faster than inflation, thanks to Brexit.
Rachel, you say you don't want no deal, but you think it's possible.
It's very possible. Clock is being run down, and unless there is a sort of 5 minutes to midnight effort to push through a deal that nobody in Parliament wants, that's what, you know, we're going to get the deal. By the way, Anna Maria, don't worry about Nigel's children. They've got German passports.
Well, they are German. Well, they are German.
It's important because we are seeing many Brexiteers that are moving to France, that are moving their assets abroad, that are buying companies in Singapore.
It'll all be a disaster, but we'll be free. We won't be governed by you or Mr. Barroso.
Using the word free.
Self-governing independent nations make their own laws, control their own borders, and have their own courts.
You have been
shaping
the Europe we have,
we're
and
not
we're glad
interested.
for that.
We're leaving. There is a consensus in this country.
There is nothing.
There is a
consensus. Is absolute.
There is a consensus in this country of just get on with it. That is now not just what the leaders want, but actually a significant number
what does get on with it mean?
To leave. Now,
what does get on with it mean?
Well,
please answer.
Leave, L-E-A-V-E, on WTO rules at 11 p.m. on the 29th of March this year. That is what we should do. It's the only way we can now deliver the Brexit that people clearly voted for. However, I don't think Westminster is in touch with public opinion on this at all.
No, only you
are. Well, I tell you what, my track record on that's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, it's called populism.
It's pretty good.
It's called populism.
It's called democracy. You don't like
democracy.
It's called populism.
And it's very awkward for you when you get the wrong result.
Well, Tessa, believe me, that was not an easy panel to chair. As you can see, it's, 971 days since the referendum, since 33.5 million people in this country voted on whether they should leave the European Union. Of course, the result was close. It was 52-48. But what we've seen in the last 2.5 years, and what we've just seen reflected in that panel, is a divided country, a fractured politics. And in 38 days' time, whether it happens or not, even when Britain does leave the European Union, there is no doubt that these debates are going to carry on for many years. Yes, years to come.
Indeed. Thank you for that, Darren McCaffrey, our political editor there. And indeed, as 39 days, as the date gets closer, it seems people just keep getting farther apart in terms of, you know, we just saw in that panel. And Andrew, you were disagreeing with a lot of what's being said there. Tell us why.
Well, I mean, poor Darren trying to chair a panel like that. I mean, I think most of the factual statements by most of the panelists were questionable, if not incorrect. Questions like, for instance, the UK's growth rate last year, which wasn't faster than the countries mentioned, or the suggestion that the sole reason that companies are leaving the UK is because of Brexit. Well, that's not true either. It's one of several key factors that are driving job losses. And so the trouble is that we're getting closer and closer to this date, but the debate seems more heat than light, and that doesn't give you a lot of faith in the abilities to have informed democratic...
Can I just say,
the
common factor was in all of the companies that are leaving are to do with Brexit. Each one says it's Brexit or something else. Brexit plus something else, right? Most of them are saying Brexit is a factor because there is so much uncertainty. You know, if we had Brexit with some kind of an agreement early on as to this is how we're going to transition, then I think maybe companies won't leave. It is the way it's been handled. It's chaos and shambolic by this government. That's why we're in a mess, you know, because it hasn't been properly managed. So it is a factor and you can't deny it's not a factor. And really to say, using things to say, oh, we've got the highest employment rate. I've got to say, we have so many people on 0-hour contracts. That means that it's very easy to say we've got very high people with not very good terms and conditions and not comparable jobs.
Well, it's just simplistic to say everything's Brexit related. If you're looking at Jaguar Land Rover, and I deal with the car industry, one of the big issues for the car industry across the globe is the whole change in, the whole change of thinking in the use of diesel cars. Ironically, diesel cars are now the cleanest diesel cars that we make. But unfortunately, going back to the situation that happened with VW a few years ago, they became sort of persona non grata. Of course, we're moving to cleaner vehicles and electric and all of this, but that's been also one of the key issues for a lot of the big car companies, how they move forward. So they are complex areas.
We have run out of time on Brexit, but of course the debate continues and will likely do so for years to come, as Darren was saying. And coming up on Raw Politics, a lot more for you. Should Europe take back ISIS fighters? EU leaders respond to Trump's ultimatum. Plus, Hungary's Viktor Orban is going after Brussels again, and this time Jean-Claude Juncker is the target. That's coming up next. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, Jean-Claude Juncker is in the crosshairs of a new Viktor Orban offensive. The Hungarian government launched a new campaign ahead of European elections, saying that EU proposals on migration threaten Hungary's security. Our team in the Cube has been looking into this. Alex Morgan joins us now with more. Alex.
Well, Tessa, let's jump right in. This is the poster from the Hungarian government, released on Facebook with accompanying text. In it are 3 claims. And those claims translated into English are they want to introduce mandatory resettlement quotas. So that's point 1, looking at these key points, claiming the EU wants mandatory resettlement quotas. They also claim they want to weaken member states' rights to border protection. And finally, they want to ease, if I just clear that off the screen, they want to ease migration with migrant visas. The fundamental claim here, as we've seen throughout this war of words between Hungary and Brussels, is that the European Union in its current form needs shaking up because it is too soft on migration, eroding the sovereignty. Also, look, they put Jean-Claude Juncker up against George Soros, the American-Hungarian, who is the boogeyman, if you like, for the Hungarian authorities. But the response from the European Commission has been strong and firm on this one. They are saying Hungarians deserve facts, accusing the Hungarian government of pumping out fake news. In an answer given to Euronews, they're saying that this is beggars belief, meaning you shouldn't really be believing this. Such a ludicrous conspiracy theory, they call it. They also say there is no they, insisting the Hungarians are at the centre of the European Union, that there is no mandatory resettlement quotas, say the EU. Also going on to say there are 0 plans for these humanitarian visas. But this response has gained a response from Mr. Viktor Kovács of the Hungarian government, saying, yes, Hungarians do deserve the facts. The point we have raised all come from the European Commission, he says, and other EU institutions. What, pray tell, he asks, is the so-called humanitarian visa. What does all this come down to, Tessa? Well, I can tell you, we in the Cube, we are still pouring through the claims and the counterclaims. This is dense. We're journalists. This is our job. For ordinary users on social media, seeing this war of words, you can imagine how difficult this is. Do stay with us on Euronews. We'll have a deeper breakdown later on. But the point we're making here is that, is it really the place on social media for the Hungarians and for the EU to be having this kind of war of words about highly complex issues? The Hungarians accusing the EU of all sorts, and the EU accusing the Hungarians of fake news. As you can see, will the lights go out on this debate? We're yet to see, but it's certainly one that probably isn't going away for quite a while.
All right, thank you for that, Alex and the team of the Cube. Well, even as Mr. Orban campaigns on the migration crisis, a new report suggests that it may not even be a crisis anymore. According to the European Asylum Support Office, in 2014, before the migration crisis, there were just over 662,000 applications for asylum. Now, that number more than doubled in 2015 and 2016, but then it began to fall. And for last year, the number of applications was 634,000, well below the pre-crisis level in 2014. All right, joining me now to take a look at this is Livia Járóka. She's a Hungarian MEP from Viktor Orban's Fidesz party list and a VP of the parliament. We also have Linnea Engström, a Swedish MEP from the Greens. And still with me is Andrew Byrne, EU correspondent for the Sunday Times. All right, Livia, I want to start with you. Viktor Orban seems to be waging this war against the EU, and migration is at the center of this. The numbers say otherwise. Why is he doing this? What is the point, really?
The 3 points that were just seen on the screen are true. I'm a member of the European Parliament, I'm Vice President, I'm sitting in the LIBE committee, and on all the 3 dossiers we have voted in the last few months. 2 weeks ago in the plenary on the humanitarian visa, and it went through. It's very important that the Commission says that there are no such plans, even if some of the parties of the EU Parliament are proposing this. It's a very important message. I do think it's important to see whether the Commission is able to talk about those people who are on the way to come here, those who came here, and what are we going to do with them? What do they want to do? Nobody is talking to them. I'm going to visit Africa very soon.
But they're not even in Hungary. Season. I mean, you know...
We have many, and we always had many. When I was 20 years old, since 20 I'm an anthropologist. Yeah. I have been working...
How many immigrants are there now in Hungary? Coming this year, for instance, last year?
What I can say to you, what I just said last week in the news...
Do you know? I mean, I'm curious.
I know, for example, that last year, 2 years ago, Hungary accepted more than 3,000 people from African countries. Yeah. Nobody in the EU has accepted that many.
Oh, no, also, no, that's actually quite low by European standards.
That's very low. 2 weeks ago, Germany, come on, yes, of course.
No, I mean,
but come on, how big country
Germany
is.
That's quite a
and
low
it's
number.
Germany who wanted to get them in. We were waiting on the border in Sopron, where I live, to give them...
Where's the factual basis for these claims?
Sleeping places and food. And they said, come on, it's Sopron. I'm 5 minutes from Austria.
So, Livia, I'm not just ask you this.
Okay, so nobody says that they cannot come. They are getting refuge. I was working in the Debrecen refugee center
for
20 years
I want to make something clear, Livia.
Researching only.
I do want to make something clear. You're saying that the fact...
These are fake news, and that's what the Hungarian government is doing as well.
Took?
We took 80,000 in 2015. We're almost 9 million people, and we are in the same union. It's not your country. It's not my country. This is the European Union, and we are taking on this.
You decided that you want to take them on, so your government did it. Extremely good.
Yeah.
The Hungarian people, the Romanians, the V4 people decided on the opposite. We have different...
But you can't even mention an accurate figure.
I mean, I can, of course I can. We have more than 5,000, and every year we accept everybody who applies to Hungary.
Well, I don't think there's 100% acceptance rate for asylum applications.
So either. Okay,
let me make one quick point.
What do you mean that we don't take in the applications? We will take in the application who wants to come to Hungary and live there.
Just to make one quick point, if I could. What's happening in Hungary is that the government is spending tens of millions of euros of taxpayers' money on essentially trolling the European Union
on a campaign,
and ascribing some kind of conspiracy to Jean-Claude Juncker and to George Soros, which is completely hysterical. And as your statistics have shown, is not based in fact.
What I would say about the Commission,
though, what I would say about the Commission is the Commission has been very slow to respond to this statement. They have now a response on Twitter 2 years after the Hungarian government started these attacks.
So I think
one at a time.
On integration, they have been slow. That's why Orban is treating like this.
I'll let you reply.
This government.
Go ahead.
I think the Commission's been very slow to respond to this too. The Commission haven't covered themselves in glory with their communications on this. But for instance, specifically on this idea of the mandatory quotas for migration, I mean, that policy is dead in the water. It's been dead for a long time.
Okay, Linnea.
We hope so.
Okay, Linnea, sorry, Livia, I want to ask Linnea this. I want to ask Linnea.
It's going on in your committees every day. You talk about it in your working groups.
If the numbers are actually low, is there a failure? Hold on, Livia. Is there a failure actually on communicating this? If the figures show that we're back to pre-crisis levels, did the left fail, in fact, in getting this message across? And maybe
this is not a crisis anymore, as you say. I mean, 600 people applying for asylum in a whole union of millions of people. That's not a problem. But I think this is. It's difficult to. Can I speak,
yes.
please?
You can reply.
Can I speak, please? This is not a debate right now. Now I'm speaking.
Darling, the number is more than.
It's very, very difficult to address someone who is doing this as a European leader when we're a European Union. And I think this is the oldest trick in the book. Politicians feasting on fear like this, scaremongering their own. With this, your
is this why it's an election issue?
He doesn't even have to take care about all the problems that is inside of Hungary because he's creating this enemy outside.
So why is this such a big deal in the election?
Is it also have the same concerns?
It is not big.
Your voters also have the same concerns in Sweden. I talk to your MEPs and they tell me.
Which ones?
So
which ones?
Why?
Which MEPs are you talking about?
The socialists, for example.
Guys, I want to take it to a broad level, onto the election.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's interesting with this debate is that it really obviously fires up passions. And it's great material for debate, and it's great material to fill up and consume the sort of political oxygen in Hungary and across Europe, because voters are concerned with it. It remains a key concern of voters in most countries. But I think the difficulty is how do you root this in facts, the facts of the actual numbers of arrivals, which are the lowest they've been in many, many years.
How do you solve it?
I think on one point we will agree on that question. How does it get solved? Because it still is a problem, maybe not a crisis.
The solution is, of course, a solidaric Europe. We have managed so much more difficult things. I mean, look at what created this union. The whole union was in a terrible state, and we managed to rebuild it up from the ground.
I'll let you wrap up, Linnea.
But we will solve it. 600 people, that's nothing.
Come on,
most of the voters don't go around accusing people like this.
The voters want to get results out of this.
We've run out of time, unfortunately.
They even want to get the people integrated or get their houses done in Africa and giving them jobs. But your parties are always voting against this.
We'll have to leave at that. It's a lively conversation. Thank you, Olivia and Linnea and Andrew, for that.
But no solution, no jobs for them.
Okay, well, we have a lot more coming up for you on the program. What to do with foreign-born ISIS fighters in Syria? European politicians are responding to an ultimatum by Donald Trump. Take them back or they go free. That debate next. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, EU leaders have responded to Donald Trump's demand to take back more than 800 captured fighters of the so-called Islamic State. The U.S. leader tweeted that if they don't take back the European fighters, he will release them. But European countries were not ready to welcome them back home just yet. And here's what some foreign ministers, including Germany's, had to say.
There will not be one answer. I think it's up to every government, because every EU government is involved in that topic in a very different way. We have countries that have a high number of foreign fighters and countries that have a lower or an inexistent number. So there will be various answers by various governments.
Wir werden heute auch die Gelegenheit nutzen, mit unseren europäischen Partnern zu sprechen, insbesondere mit unseren französischen und unseren britischen Freunden. Sie wissen, die Rechtslage ist so, dass deutsche Staatsbürger das Anrecht auf Wiedereinreise haben. Allerdings haben wir im Moment wenig Möglichkeiten, in Syrien zu überprüfen, ob tatsächlich deutsche Staatsangehörige betroffen sind. Wenn das der Fall wäre, gilt es zu prüfen, inwieweit sie in Kampfhandlungen des IS verwickelt gewesen sind. Das würde zur Folge haben, dass ein Strafverfahren gegen sie eingeleitet werden muss, und diese Leute können dann nur...
And here with me to discuss this is Kurt Dibuff, the director of the Tahrir Institute for Middle East Policy. We also have Anders Vistisen, a Danish MEP sitting with the European Conservatives and Reformist Group. And still with us is Andrew Byrne, EU correspondent with the Sunday Times. All right, I'll start with you, Kurt, because I was reading your article today, your opinion piece, saying what Donald Trump was saying, that Europe should take back all these fighters. He's actually right.
I think I never thought I would say it, but for the first time, I think that Trump is right. By the way, his intelligence service are saying this already for more than a year. And why? If we look at the history of the Mujahideen, and how Al-Qaeda started, it was exactly because some countries didn't want to take their Afghan fighters back. So what did they do? They started to wander around into the Middle East, regroup in Sudan, and then start Al-Qaeda with all the history as we know. So right now, 15,000 ISIS fighters are still wandering around Syria, Iraq, Libya, Egypt, and so forth. Yeah. So this is dangerous, and this is a potential new Al-Qaeda,
so
new
Europe
ISIS.
Should take responsibility for the foreign fighters.
There are 800 people there that we can take back, so we can make this group smaller. I think we have to take responsibility. It's not easy to take them back. There is a security problem, there's a money problem. I agree with that. But it's better than let them make, again, a new ISIS.
Anders, should we take them back?
I think not. First of all, most of these people have committed war crimes, and the best place to convict such crimes will be where the atrocities...
Well, they are European citizens.
Yes, many of them are double citizens, have two citizenships, but the place they have committed the crime is in Syria and Iraq, not in Denmark or Germany or Britain. And just like a Dane who committed murder in the US is convicted and tried there, they should be tried and convicted there, both because that's where the crime has been committed, but also for evidential reasons.
For those with, you were getting into technicalities here, but for those with just a European citizen, you agree that they should be here taken responsibility for by their governments?
Not if we can avoid it in any way. I don't think that they belong in Europe, and I think the most sensible thing is to deny them return to Europe. They are too big a security threat.
Where do you put them? What do you do? What do you do with?
They have voluntarily decided
as Kurt was saying, it creates a bigger problem for everybody, not just Europe. For if it breeds even more terrorism, then what then?
I would argue that it's better to have a security at home domestically. These are trained fighters. These are people who have come back to Europe with capabilities to commit attacks, to train others to commit attacks.
Actually, the British intelligence service did say that they have capabilities. So, Andrew, what did you want to say?
It's very complex. But the second layer of complexity is that many of these European citizens have wives and children who are also EU citizens.
Which is, I think, the issue in the UK.
Indeed.
There's
There's a court case in Belgium here tomorrow. Can you bring back the children of who are EU citizens, the children of jihadi fighters? If you do that, can you leave their mothers behind in Syria and in Afghanistan, or is that in itself a violation of their human rights? So it's extremely complicated, and I don't think we're anywhere near a sort of a consensus on this point.
You're mentioning that case here in Belgium actually let us talk to someone who's had a very personal experience with ISIS and foreign fighters. Dimitri Bonting's life dramatically changed in 2013. His teenage son, Jejoin, was radicalized in Belgium, and he wound up in Syria for 9 months. Now, he traveled to Syria several times as Dimitri to look for his son and bring him back home. Well, his son, Jejoin, got a suspended sentence after cooperating with authorities. And Dimitri joins us now live. He is in Belgium. Dimitri, good to see you there. So I think the question that we are having here is that should they be allowed in? So your son, you were trying to bring your son back. Why should Europe be accepting foreign fighters like your son, given the potential risk that they pose to the societies?
Well, I have a successful story and light in the darkness, and I really, really love this statement about the President of the United States, Donald Trump, about the statement to put pressure on the European governments to take these European youngsters back home where they belong. They are Europeans. They're born here. They grow up here in our neighborhood. So I really love this statement of the President of the United States. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. They need to take action and responsibility, which they have in Europe.
And what about the fear that people have? It's an opinion that you must have heard before. What about the potential danger that they pose? What do you think of that?
This is the biggest joke ever, especially with the public opinion, because the last days I never have seen in my life such a kind of fake news and political recuperation. Political recuperation. I don't have other words for it. It's the responsibility of European governments. They are European youngsters. They need to bring them back where they belong.
Dimitri, your son was de-radicalized, and you know, he's still under protection, I believe now. What was his path like into rejoining and being part of society again?
Well, Belgium failed in this. Belgium don't have a right radicalization returning program. Denmark have the most beautiful program in the world, and they have proven that. The Dutch country is a bit the same. France take already action and responsibility also. They brought the last months already more than 130 different youngsters back from Syria to France. So Denmark has proven, and not only Denmark, other Scandinavian countries also, that they succeed in this.
Dimitri, just quickly, how is your son doing? Is he all right?
Wonderful, but because of security reasons, we can't talk about it.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Dimitri Bonting there. He went to Syria to look for his son and bring him back to Belgium. Thank you for joining us. Well, he says Denmark has a good de-radicalization rehabilitation program.
You haven't taken back any foreign fighters, but of course, like many European nations, we are combating radicalization within our own society.
That is a success story. His son is back here.
I understand he's Belgium, not Danish, but Denmark hasn't taken back formally any foreign fighters like the US president have requested. We have had some come back, and we have had great troubles with convicting them, because it's very difficult to have the right jurisprudence when the crimes have been committed so far away. And of course, we, like all European countries, try to de-radicalize, but I would say it's a mixed story whether it has been successful or not.
So, Dimitri was bringing up the role of governments in trying to de-radicalize and rehabilitate youngsters coming in. What do you think of that? How much responsibility does the state have in this?
Well, I mean, it is a responsibility, obviously, but I mean, I would also like to comment on the thing that's saying, like, let them be tried in Iraq or in Syria. I mean, Syria is in rubble. I mean, there's no... The only people that survive, let's say, the Islamists are being tortured to death. Iraq, do not forget, how did ISIS start? Because of the war in Iraq that we, the West, started. I mean, United States, UK, and other European countries. Now this country is trying to get back on its feet again. It's having massive difficulties with these people. And now we have to take back a few of them. And we say, no, it's your problem. Solve it in Iraq. How? I mean, and that's, I think, we have to take responsibility just by taking these few people out of this country, out of Syria and out of Iraq. I mean, that's how we take responsibility and not giving it back to Iraq.
Do you think, Andrew, that European nations are in denial about the responsibility that they have in this?
Well, I think it's extremely tricky, because if these are your citizens, how do you deny them entry to your country? And the additional problem is, if ultimately you're going to be unable to deny them return to your country, is it more of a threat to have them at loose, if you like, in Syria and Iraq, where they can organise perhaps jihadi activities, or to have them prosecuted and imprisoned in a system in the European Union? I don't think we're any closer to an answer on that, but there's a risk either way.
And is there a problem of tackling the root cause of radicalization? Okay, Anders.
I think that
in Europe
there have been a quite large amount of naivete when it comes to radicalization from the European side. I think some countries are more progressed in what they're trying to do to counter radicalization and make sure that people are not following that path. But I don't think we can say anywhere in West Europe that we don't have a problem. It's just a question of how significant.
We don't have a problem in radicalization.
I don't think you can say anywhere in Western Europe that we do not have a problem with radicalization.
Okay, all right.
It's just a question of what degree. Some countries have been more successful.
Sure.
Some are lacking a bit behind.
I'll give you the last word on this in terms of tackling the root causes here in Europe.
Well, I mean, we are trying to do that, I mean, European government, but not enough. But, I mean, people can be radical. The question is, when do they become violent? And, of course, they became violent when ISIS was there. So the moment that ISIS disappears, then, let's say, the rate of violence it also disappears. So what we should do is try to avoid that things like that come back. So you can be radical, you can believe in a caliphate, as long as you do not do crimes. So not getting ISIS back on the ground, I think, is our most important goal.
Meaning you're saying get fighters back into Europe and not leave them open and exposed to such elements in the Middle East. All right. Coming up on Raw Politics, the standoff continues as Theresa May comes to Brussels tomorrow. Has Brexit killed the art of compromise in politics? We want to hear from you this time. Stick around the next hour for your chance to call in and tell us what you think. Now, the contact information is on your screen right now. The phone number is 00800 3333 7002 or email us at rawpoll@euronews.com. Join the debate on Twitter and Facebook and use the hashtag #RawPolitics. Our lines are open. It's after the break. Welcome back to Raw Politics. So now you have heard from our panel on all of today's stories, and now we want to hear your views. Our phone-in show, your call, is coming up at 7 p.m. CET or 6 p.m. if you're watching us from the UK. And here's how you can get in touch. All the information is on your screen right now. You can call us at 00800 3333 7002 or send us an email at rawpoll@euronews.com. Find us on social media. Just use the hashtag #RawPolitics. We're following that one. And you can search for us on Skype. We'd like to see you as well. And joining me now to discuss this, we have Nathan Gill. He is a British MEP with the EFDD group. We also have Maeve McMahon, a Brussels correspondent for Euronews, and still with us, Andrew Byrne of the Sunday Times. All right, so again, we would like to hear you give us your views, your thoughts on all the topics that we're asking. And here we have 3 questions for you. The first one, has Brexit killed compromise? That's the first question we're asking. Second, is migration an overblown issue? Third, do politicians deserve immunity? All right, Maeve, let's start with the first question. What is it? And
the first question, Tessa, tonight is, has Brexit killed compromise? Because as you all know, we're less than 40 days away till the 29th of March, the day we've been talking about for the last 2 years, and we're still nowhere closer to having any sort of clarity on what is going on.
I mean, we're watching that debate
neither
earlier.
side are budging.
Absolutely. So, you saw the debate earlier in London, and I mean, people were just coming on from different sides and different opinions. And, you know,
so we're asking, has Brexit killed the art of compromise when it comes to politics in the EU and back in the UK? And of course, we know that Barnier has said many times, look, we're not going to compromise. We never came up with the idea for the UK to leave, so why should we compromise? But yet, we think at this stage, many saying that we shouldn't budge a little.
It's very binary, isn't it? It's very... It's a very binary question, and so compromise, it's very hard to find where you can compromise.
And it's like an onion. There's just so many layers.
So we would like to know what you think. Do you think that Brexit killed the art of compromise in politics? All right, second question, Andrew. What are we talking about again?
Yeah, well, we just had a very fiery debate.
We did, didn't we?
I mean, the show is called Raw Politics, and I think we delivered some sort of raw emotional nerves.
So we're asking,
Yes, the question we're asking, following on from that debate, is migration an overblown issue? Is it simply... an exaggeration of some governments, or are our governments, in fact, failing to deal with something that really bothers voters? So,
yeah, something you were bringing up earlier was facts. What, are there enough facts? But at the same time, it's such an emotional issue.
They're real concerns of voters. So have governments done enough to deal with it, or are governments just feeding a kind of anxiety that isn't based in facts?
Yeah, so what do you think? Do you think
it
is
overblown? And as you said, the migrant quotas is dead in the water. I remember it was brought up by the Luxembourg.
Indeed.
And they were in the presidency a couple of years ago, and it was already hard to get that pushed through.
Well, that was one of the big downfalls of David Cameron. He tried to have a quota of 10,000 or less than tens of thousands. It was impossible for him to do that.
The UK have an opt-out. They didn't even have to opt into those quotas.
Guys, join into this discussion. It's going to happen later as well. All right, this is something for politicians. Do politicians deserve immunity? That is the third question we're asking. Now, this is because we're basing this on the story that Matteo Salvini, he was supposed to face a trial on kidnapping charges. Now, this is because there was a boat full of migrants and asylum seekers, and they were held much longer at sea than they should have been. So there were calls for him to be tried. Now, the Five-Star Movement, they voted to not let him face trial to avoid embarrassment for the government. So I think this is basically, do politicians deserve this kind of immunity? So Matteo Salvini, he's not going to be facing trial, So this is something for politicians. I don't know, yes or no, do politicians deserve immunity?
In certain circumstances, if they murder, then obviously not. But if they are saying things within the course of what they believe in, then they shouldn't be facing trial and all kinds of backlashes just because they say something people don't want to hear them saying.
So again, we'd like to hear what you have to say on all of our top stories. And I think now we have time now for a raw moment for this evening, an unapologetic slam to socialism delivered by the President of the United States. Let's take a look.
In short, all of us here today know that there is nothing less democratic than socialism. Everywhere and anywhere it appears, socialism advances under the banner of progress, but in the end it delivers only corruption, exploitation, and decay.
A quick reaction to that, Nathan.
Well, that's pretty uncompromising, isn't it? I mean, he's got a point. Socialism has caused a lot of problems, but so has all kinds of democracy. Any form of government, you're going to find good and bad.
Right.
I don't think you can be too black and white about it in the way he was there.
Would you prefer a benevolent dictatorship?
Well, there you go. What do you think? Now, call us in. Again, the questions that we were asking you earlier. The call-in show is right after this. 00800 333 7002. We'd like to hear from you. Thank you for watching us. Good night.